All right, let's talk about reading people. We've all seen the pop psychology stuff, right? But what if I told you there's a real systematic way to go from just guessing what's on someone's mind to making a truly expert assessment? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to build that toolkit right now.
Okay, so let's start with a total classic. You're in a meeting, you make a point, and boom, someone across the table crosses their arms. What's the first thing that pops into your head? Probably that they're defensive, closed off, or they hate your idea. But is that really the whole story?
You know, the old school approach, the one you see in 100 blog posts, treats body language like a simple dictionary. You see one gesture, you look up its one meaning. Crossed arms equals defensive. Fidgeting equals nervous. Super simple, right? The problem is, it's also just wrong.
That's because that whole dictionary method, the amateur guess, leads to one thing: constant misinterpretation. What we're diving into today is the expert's approach. This is a disciplined, systematic process, and it leads to genuine insight. It is the difference between a wild guess and a real, solid assessment.
So, how do we do it? The whole system is built on these 4 pillars. We're going to walk through every single one. First, establishing a person's baseline. Then, finding clusters of signals. After that, analyzing the context. And finally, testing for what we call congruence. Think of this as your brand new framework for understanding what's really going on with people.
Okay, let's jump right in with pillar number 1. And honestly, this is the most critical of them all: understanding a person's baseline. This right here is the step that almost everyone skips, and it's why they get it wrong.
So, what is a baseline? It's just someone's normal. It's how they act when they're totally relaxed and not under any pressure. Do they naturally talk with their hands? Does their voice always have a high pitch? Are they a bit of a fidgeter? See, if you don't figure this out first, you're flying blind. It's the single biggest mistake you can make. So, how do you actually find it? It's pretty simple. You just watch them during some casual, low-stress chat. Talk about the weather, their favorite sports team, what they did last weekend. And while you're talking, just notice things. What's their typical posture? How fast do they talk? The point here isn't to find some magic tell. It's to figure out their normal so that you can spot the change from that normal when a more serious topic comes up. That deviation, that's where the real insight is hiding.
And this idea of deviation builds perfectly into our second pillar. Once you've got that baseline, you can stop looking for single, isolated signals and start looking for meaningful patterns, or what we call clusters. This quote really hits the nail on the head. A single gesture is just one word. By itself, it can mean almost anything. You need the whole sentence, the surrounding cues, to actually understand what's being said. Trying to interpret an isolated cue is just a recipe for disaster.
Let's go back to our friend with the crossed arms. If we see that gesture in total isolation, what does it really mean? Well, who knows? They could be defensive, sure, or they could just be cold or tired, or maybe that's just how they like to sit. It's completely ambiguous on its own.
But now, look what happens when we start adding other signals to the mix, when we build a cluster. Now, the person has their arms crossed and they're frowning, and you notice their jaw is clenched tight. Their whole body is leaning away from you, and look, even their feet are pointing towards the exit. All of a sudden, it's not ambiguous at all, is it? This is a powerful, powerful cluster that's practically screaming disagreement or resistance. See the difference?
Now for our third pillar, context. This is so important. No behavior ever happens in a vacuum. The situation, the culture, the room you're in, it's all part of the message. You have to filter everything you observe through the lens of the environment.
This illustrates the point perfectly. Look at this. Someone crossing their arms while waiting for a bus in the middle of winter? Yeah, they're probably just cold. But that exact same gesture in a tense boardroom negotiation after you've just presented a new budget, it almost certainly means something very, very different. The gesture didn't change, but the context changes everything.
And that brings us to the grand finale, our fourth pillar, the congruence test. This is where we pull everything together to find the truth, especially in those fascinating moments when what someone is saying doesn't quite match up with what their body is doing.
So let's picture this scenario. A project manager is in a big meeting. They get asked about a really tough, aggressive new deadline, and they look the boss in the eye and say, "I have complete confidence we can meet that target." The words sound great, totally confident, but what is their body saying?
And here it is, a classic textbook case of incongruence. The verbal message is complete confidence, but the nonverbal cluster is telling a totally different story. Right as they say it, they break eye contact. They start rubbing the back of their neck, which is a super common self-soothing gesture. Their feet actually start to shift toward the door, like they want to escape. And you hear their vocal pitch go up just a little bit. Their body is practically shouting discomfort and doubt. And here's the golden rule. When the words and the body don't match, you always trust the body.
So let's put a bow on this. We've moved way beyond that simplistic body language dictionary. You now have a powerful, reliable new toolkit, and it's all built on these 4 key principles.
Let's just run through them one last time. First, always establish the baseline. You've got to know what's normal for that person. Second, look for clusters. Never trust a single gesture. Look for groups of signals all telling the same story. Third, filter everything through context. Where are they? What's going on? And finally, run the congruence test. If the words and the body are in a fight, the body wins. Every time.
By applying this 4-pillar framework, you're not just guessing anymore. You're engaging in a disciplined process of observation and critical thinking. So the only real question left is, now that you have this toolkit, what truths hiding in plain sight all around you are you finally going to start to see?